Section 21 of Anthropology. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Anthropology, Book 1 by Immanuel Kant, translated by Adolf Ernst Kroger. Section 21. Mental Diversion, distractio. Concerning the manner in which to cognize the internal as well as the external of man. Section 44 is missing. 45. Mental diversion, distractio, is the condition of a turning off of attention, abstractio, from certain dominant representations by distributing them among others of a dissimilar kind. If it occurs purposely, it is called dissipation. If involuntarily, it is termed absence of mind, absentia. One of the weaknesses of the human mind is this: to be nailed to some representation or another to which we have applied great or permanent attention, and from which we are not now able to relieve ourselves, that is, not able to again make our power of imagination free. When this defect becomes a habit and is always directed to one and the same object, it may turn into insanity. To be absent-minded in society is impolite, frequently also ridiculous. Women are generally subject to this infirmity, unless they have turned their attention to study. A servant who is absent-minded when attending at the table has generally something evil in his mind, either some evil of which he fears the consequences, or some evil which he proposes to do. But to divert our mind, that is to give a diversion to our involuntary reproductive power of imagination. For instance, when a clergyman, having finished his memorized sermon, desires to prevent its afterward haunting his mind, this is a necessary and in part also artificial procedure for taking care of the health of our minds. A protracted pondering upon one and the same object leaves behind an echo, as it were, even as the music of a dance, if long continued, still keeps humming in the ears of those who return from their revels. Or, as in the case of children who incessantly repeat one and the same bon mot of their fancy, especially if it sounds rhythmical, an echo, which annoys the mind and can only be stopped by diverting and directing the attention to other objects, such, for instance, as the reading of newspapers. The regathering of our faculties, collectio animi, so as to be prepared for every new business, is a restoration of the balance of power of our mental forces, which promotes the health of the mind. Social entertainments and amusements of varied characters are, like games, the most wholesome means for this purpose. But such entertainments must not skip abruptly from one thing to another, against the natural association of ideas, for in that case the social party disperses in a condition of distraction of mind, the 100th being mixed with the 1000th, unity of conversation lacking altogether, and the mind thus finding itself utterly confused and in need of a new diversion wherewith to disperse the former. From this it appears that there must be an art, not a common art, for busy people to diet their minds in order to gain new strength. But when we have gathered our thoughts together, that is, have prepared ourselves to do with them as it pleases us, we cannot on that account call any one who intentionally gives way to his thoughts in an improper place, or improperly in his business relations to another person, taking no notice of such place or relation, distrait, but only absent-minded, to be which in society is certainly impolite. Hence it is not a common art to divert ourselves without ever becoming distrait, which latter condition, if it become habitual, gives to the man subject to this infirmity the appearance of a dreamer, and makes him useless for society, since he follows his own imagination in its free play, uncontrolled by reason. The reading of novels has, among many other disturbances of the mind, also this result, that it makes a habit of mental diversion. For although by sketching characters which can actually be found among men, though they be somewhat exaggerated, it gives a connection to thought, as if the novel were a real history, which must always be told in a certain systematic manner. It nevertheless allows the mind, while reading, to switch off, as it were; that is, to insert still other events as fictions, whereby the mental operation becomes fragmentary, and we permit our representations of one and the same object to play in our mind disjointedly (sparsum), and not connectedly (conjunctim), or according to the unity of our understanding. The teacher in the pulpit or in the academic lecture room, likewise the prosecuting attorney or the lawyer in the court room, must exhibit three kinds of attention. Firstly, as to what he says now, so that he may express it clearly; secondly, as to what he has said; and thirdly, as to what he is going to say. For if he omits to attend to any one of these things, that is, to arrange them in this precise order, he distracts his own mind, as well as that of his hearers or readers, and an otherwise good enough mind can, under such circumstances, not escape the charge of being in a state of confusedness. 46. An itself healthy understanding, one which has no mental weakness, may nevertheless be accompanied with weaknesses in regard to its application, which necessitate either postponement until it attains proper ripeness by growth, or the being represented by another person in regard to his business matters which are of a civil character. The natural or legal incapacity of an otherwise healthy man to use his own understanding in civil affairs is called Unmündigkeit. If it is founded on unripeness of age, it is called minority. But if it is founded on legal institutions for the transaction of public business, it may be called the legal and civil Unmündigkeit. Children are naturally unmündig, and their parents are their natural guardians. Married women are held civilly unmündig at any age, the husband being the natural curator. But it is different when a wife holds property apart from her husband. For although the woman has, by virtue of the nature of her sex, sufficient mouth tools to represent herself and her husband before court, so far as talk is concerned, in all cases relative to the mine and thine, and hence might be considered even übermündig in this respect, still, as little as it becomes woman's sex to enter the army ranks, even so little does it become her to defend her rights in a person and carry on legal business for herself. She needs a representative for this purpose, and this legal Unmündigkeit in regard to public transactions gives her all the more power in regard to household affairs, wherein the right of the weaker party becomes a factor to revere and defend, which the male sex feels itself bound by its very nature. Still, however degrading, it is very comfortable to make oneself unmündig, to be under tutelage. And of course there is no lack of leaders who make use of this pliancy of the large masses, that are not like to unite of their own accord, and who know how to represent to them that it is dangerous to use one's own understanding without the leadership of another, nay, that this danger is great and probably fatal. The head of a state calls himself the father of his country, because he knows better than his subjects how to make them happy. But the people are, for their own benefit, condemned to perpetual tutelage. And when Adam Smith says improperly of the rulers, that they themselves are without exception the greatest spendthrifts of all, he is nevertheless powerfully refuted by the wise laws regulating luxury passed in many countries. The clergy keep the laymen strictly and persistently in their tutelage. The people have no voice and no judgment in regard to the path which they have to take in order to reach heaven. It needs not man's own eyes to reach that place. They will guide him sure enough. And though they put holy writings in his hands, so that he may see with his own eyes, he is at the same time warned by his leaders not to find anything else than what they assure him they have already discovered in them. Everywhere the mechanical direction of men under the rule of others is considered the surest means to make them follow a legal order. Scholars love, as a rule, to remain under the tutelage of their wives in regard to household affairs. A scholar buried among his books, on hearing a servant cry, "There's fire in one of those rooms," replied, "You know that those matters belong to my wife." Finally, a man may become unmündig again, after having been mündig, for instance, when he has turned out a spendthrift, or when, after having acquired legal majority, he exhibits a weakness of the mind in the administration of his property, which stamps him a child or idiot. But the consideration of this matter lies beyond the field of anthropology. Section 21.